Hey everybody, this is Dan Friedman. I'm a data center SE at Cisco, and like many of you, I've been learning some about artificial intelligence over the last six to 9 months, I would say. About 6 months ago, my team was asked to get the NVIDIA AI infrastructure and operations certification. And one of the key takeaways that I had from that course, it teaches a lot of fundamentals, but this was just one of them that I think is it particularly important, is this concept of the AI application development pipeline. And I talked a little bit about this in my previous video posted to my artificial intelligence playlist, so I don't want to cover it in excruciating detail here. Please go take a look at that video and make sure that you understand these concepts. But basically, data preparation, making sure that data is ready to be fed through the appropriate tools in order to train a model. And then once you have a model, you can leverage a different set of tools in order to fine tune that model or add external data sources to that model so that it can be either more highly performant and accurate in the case of fine tuning, or so that the model can answer questions from the external data sources in the case of RAG. And then once you've got this model, you can basically put it up on an inferencing server. And so I would argue from a Cisco perspective, a Cisco product perspective, right, we can provide the network and compute and GPU and NVIDIA AI enterprise suite of tools that can basically help you accomplish this AI application development pipeline. There's different tools associated with each one of these stages. We offer all those tools. We offer the hardware to get, to provide the plumbing to accomplish training a model. But for us, the end game is a model sitting on an inference server. And so, what does that really mean? That means that that model can then be used in some kind of AI application where there's some kind of user interface where you can make a query to the model, ask it some questions, or ask it to do some tasks, and then it will, do what it's supposed to do and provide a response back to the user interface. Now, we don't provide the user interface. We provide the inferencing server for the model, right? So we basically, the end game for us is we host the model. And so I asked some questions of some of our internal AI experts and said, well, do we have any tools that can help customers develop applications that leverage these models? And the answer was that's really mostly what the open source community is for. No, there are no such tools included in NVIDIA AI Enterprise suite of tools. Okay, so that's what I wanted to spend some time going over. Is okay, what are some of these open source tools? How can we use them? And I started pursuing this specifically around the topic of AI agents or agentic AI. I believe these terms are used interchangeably. And a friend pointed me to, I was already investigating some tools. I guess I would start by saying, I've heard that there's, thousands of different types of AI tools. And obviously when there's that many tools, you can't learn them all. You can't be an expert at all of them. And nor do you really need to, right? Because certain tools, just like tools in your garage, are meant for a specific purpose. A hammer is for nails. You don't use a hammer to screw in screws, and you don't use a screwdriver to hammer in nails, right? Each tool has its specific use case and its specific purpose. And so for me, I was looking for tools that would allow me to understand the concepts of AI agents and try to come up with a use case where I could leverage an AI agent for something somewhat useful. Okay. So we're going to talk about AI agents in a minute, but before we do, I want to spend a minute here on my setup. So if you want to replicate this, all you need to do is go to Google and type in N8N, which you see here, self-hosted. Okay, and you can follow the instructions to basically download this package of containers run it on your local workstation using Docker Desktop. I'll show you how to launch it here in just a minute. Um, but yeah, you'll need Docker Desktop. You'll need potentially a license for that if you're working for a corporation. You'll need to download the package of containers. And so you can see the containers here. Okay. This is called the self-hosted AI starter kit. So N8N itself is a workflow automation tool that also includes integration capability for things like AI agents and working with large language models. Okay, and I'm going to show this. Um, there is a container for Postgres, which is obviously a database. I don't know if N8N is using Postgres internally as a backend database. I sort of suspect that it is. I can't confirm that it is. I haven't done enough reading to know that it is. But anyway, it's there. I'm not using it directly in this demo. Okay. Olama is basically a package that allows you to download open source AI models into this container and then leverage them within your N8N workflow automations. Okay, so this means locally hosted AI models. Okay, so you're going to need a GPU in your laptop in order to be able to do that. And then Quadrant is, let me go back to this screen, sorry about that. Quadrant is a vector store, which is useful for things like chunking documents, searching large documents, and integrating a chatbot type feature with being able to do retrieval augmented generation, which is a RAG type demo, right? So being able to ask questions about the contents within a document and um, having the chat be able to respond with information from the document, okay, which is essentially RAG. So I'm not using Quadrant in this case. I'm going to use an external vector store called Pinecone, but the concepts are similar. We can see right now that none of these containers are running, so I'm going to come over here to my command line. Before I do, I just recently had a laptop refresh. My laptop has this NVIDIA RTX 1080A generation laptop GPU. I also ran this by some of the AI experts here at Cisco, and one of them actually said, "Oh, that's actually not a terrible GPU. That's actually," he said, "I'm kind of jealous. It's pretty decent." So, for whatever that's worth, right? I'm not doing anything um, very GPU intensive in this demo, which is cool, right? Because you're going to get a sense of maybe you'll get a sense of what's possible and all that you could accomplish without having to have crazy amounts of GPU resources. Okay. So anyway, to start up this series of containers, in my case, since this is a NVIDIA GPU, I will use Docker Compose, profile GPU NVIDIA, and say up. And it's basically going to spin up all these containers really quick. You'll see that here in the background. You'll see them launching. Okay, and then at the very end, when it gets to the bottom, it'll show us that basically there's a web server listening on localhost, and that's how we're going to access the N8N workflow automation tool. Okay, I think it's going to show up in blue here in just a minute. Okay, and there it is, localhost on port 5678. So I'm just going to minimize this. I'm going to minimize, well, before I minimize this, I do want to cover one concept, and that is these Olama being a place to host these open source AI models locally. So if you go to olama.com/library, this is a list of open source AI models that you can download into the Olama container on using Docker Desktop. So to do that, you would click here on Olama, you would click here on exec, and then you can type in commands like Olama list, and you'll see local models that are already downloaded to the container. Um, but you can come here to this site, olama.com/library, and you can, filter based on popularity, newest models, whatever. You can read about the capabilities of each model. They're used for different purposes. They come in different numbers of parameters, and you want to be careful not to get too large, because if, let's say I click on Gemma 3, Gemma 3 is the open source version of Google's Gemini. Okay. And it talks about that right down here, right? So there's a description of it. Um, and then you can see based on the number of parameters, this is 1 billion, 4 billion, 12 billion, 27 billion, and you can see the respective download size. So unless you want to download 17 gigs worth of data on your laptop, you may want to go with something that's got less parameters, but keep in mind the lesser parameters sort of, there's sort of a correlation to how intelligent your model is. And I've actually decided against. The reason I'm getting into this is because originally my intent was to develop everything locally, right, using my GPU, so that I don't have to pay any money and all of that kind of stuff. But turns out it's really, really cheap to leverage models on OpenAI's platform, and it's actually quite convenient. So, if you want to develop using local models, then this may be an option for you. So just keep in mind, right? There's kind of a balance that needs to be reached between the size of your download, the intelligence of your model. A couple of lessons that I've learned during all of this is two things. One, model selection is really important, and two, or system prompt is equally as important. If you have an excellent prompt but a really kind of stupid model, it doesn't matter how good your model is, how good your prompt is. The model is just not smart enough to do anything intelligent with your prompt. And the opposite is true as well, right? If you have a really smart model, but you have a really bad prompt, it doesn't matter how smart the model is. You're not giving it intelligent instructions so that it can give you an intelligent response. Kind of becomes this garbage in, garbage out type situation. So having an intelligent model to start with will save you time and frustration as you're developing your system prompt. Because what I did was I actually started with Gemma 3 or Llama 3, I can't remember, and I was trying to develop my prompt, and I just couldn't get accurate results out of it. And I kind of tore my hair out for a couple of days. And then once I decided, all right, let me try and swap out using Olama models locally for using open AI models over the internet. Voila. I didn't even make any changes to my system prompt. It just started working the way I was expecting it to be working. Okay, so wanted to kind of convey the importance of choosing a great model and writing a great system prompt. We'll talk more about that. So anyway, just wanted to introduce you to this Olama library where you can learn about different open source models, and you can download them using, so up here it says Olama Run Gemma 3. So this would be the name of the image. And by default, it will pull the latest, which is 3.3 gig. And in this case, that matches this guy here. So that's a 4 billion parameter version. If you want to download the 12 billion parameter version, then instead of saying Olama Run, you would say Olama Pull Gemma 3 colon 12B. And you can just copy that like this. Okay, you'd come over here to Docker Desktop and you type in Olama Pull, and then you could just paste that right in here, and then you'd hit enter, and it would download that version of the model right here into the container. And then as soon as you do that, it becomes available for consumption within N8N, okay, which is our workflow automation tool. We're going to get to that in a minute. Okay, so just wanted to show you guys that and a little bit about my environment, what I'm doing, etc. Okay, so here, based on this local host on 5678, you can see here we are, local host on 5678. This is the workflow automation tool known as N8N. And I was in the process of learning maybe a few other workflow automation tools like make.com, which is quite a bit older. This tool is newer. It's quite popular. It's gaining a lot of traction with regards to AI agents. So I felt like this was a better tool for me to go with. I was also looking at another tool called Relevance AI, which is similar, but I like a couple of things in particular about this tool. Number one being the visualization of the workflow. In Relevance AI, you kind of have this top-down view within their web UI that doesn't necessarily convey the order in which things are um, being executed or where data is being pulled from. It's kind of hard to explain, but anyway, I like this tool because of the visualization, and then also because um, N8N supports something called nodes, and you assemble different nodes into a workflow, and each node performs a certain part of the workflow responsibilities. Each node is like, it executes some tasks. And what's nice is when you double click on a node, you get the ability to configure that node, and you also get to see the input data from the prior node and the output data generated by the current node that you've double clicked on. So being able to see the input and the output data makes it a lot easier, I think, to visualize and troubleshoot your workflows, right, when you're building them. So for those reasons, I decided to go with N8N. Um, and what I want to demo in this video is the concept of AI agents. Okay, so before we actually go, um, hold on a second. Let me find something I need here. Okay, I found it. So before we go into the demo, I just want to talk about we're gonna look at these three workflows right here: Google Calendar Management, RAG with Pinecone, and Image Generator. These three workflows actually work together, but the main one is here, Google Calendar Management. This is where we're going to cover the concept of an AI agent. So, what is an AI agent? Basically, it's a digital employee or worker, and it's something that you create to handle tasks for you as you would handle them yourself, right? So it's automation. That's what it is, right? But we can consider it a digital worker. And an AI agent or digital employee basically requires five things. Okay, these aren't any different really than what a real employee would need when being asked to do a task. So the first thing is the AI agent needs a brain. Okay, it can't operate without a brain. And so in our case, the brain is a large language model, whether that is a locally hosted model using Olama or a remote model hosted on OpenAI's platform, which is what I'm going to demonstrate here. Uh, the AI agent needs a brain. The large language model enables the AI agent to understand communications in natural language, in our language, which is English. And it also is trained on a lot of data, meaning that it sort of has a generalist skill set. It's quite good at many things. I wouldn't consider it an expert at any one thing. So it's more um, it's more broad in terms of its capabilities and less deep in terms of its expertise. Okay, but still quite useful for a wide variety of use cases. So in our case, the brain is going to be GPT-4o Mini model, which lives and is hosted on OpenAI's platform. And this is a large language model, okay, created and trained by OpenAI, and available to us for us to consume for very small amounts of money. Okay. The second thing that an AI agent needs is memory. Okay. And this is optional, but if you are implementing a chat bot type situation or you have a chat interface for triggering your workflows, then what memory provides is that tracking of the context of a chat conversation. So this is like, for example, if you're chatting with your AI and you say, "My name is Dan," and then it says, "Great, nice to meet you, Dan," and then it doesn't have a memory, right? And the very next thing you say is, "What is my name?" It says, "I don't know your name," because it doesn't remember what you just told it, right? So that's why you need a memory. It's for tracking the context of a chat conversation. So in our case, we're just using a local memory configuration. It'll basically remember the last five messages or something simple like that, which is good enough for demonstrating the concept, right, of context tracking and recollection of prior elements of your chat, your conversation. Okay, the third thing that an AI agent needs is a set of instructions, and this is what I was earlier referring to as a system prompt. And the system prompt can be static, but it can also include dynamic input, allowing um, allowing the LLM, the brain, which is going to process the instructions, to uh, uh, come up with, if the input is dynamic, then the output will be dynamic. And I guess one of the key things to understand about large language models up front, right, is that these are not deterministic. These are predictive in nature, right? And so therefore, just by nature, um, uh, large language models are not necessarily going to put out exactly the same response every time. Now, if you give the large language model very specific instructions, uh, and steps to follow and examples, etc., then you actually can get um, the large language model to put out consistent results. Okay, and this is super useful when when uh, leveraging large language models within automation, right? Because automation doesn't necessarily include a chat interface, right? Automation, being fully automated, means that you have to be able to trust a large language model to deliver a result that you're looking for, not just some randomness because you're, in the middle of chatting with it. So anyway, the system prompt is very important. The next element that an AI agent needs is knowledge. Okay, and this is optional, but basically, this is that supplementary data that is not built into the model itself, that you sort of bolt onto the side of the model, if you will. You can imagine this as being a folder on a hard drive, and inside that folder, there's a number of data files like PDFs, and you want your model to essentially scan, index, read all of those files, and then allow you to be able to ask questions about the contents of those files and get a response. Okay, so this is what we typically refer to as RAG. So again, knowledge is optional and but necessary if you're doing a RAG type use case. Okay. And then finally, the fifth thing that an AI agent needs are tools. Okay, so just like any real employee is given a phone and given a laptop and given access to certain systems needed to accomplish their job, these are the tools for that employee, right? Well, you can build multiple tools and attach multiple tools to a single AI agent in order to allow that AI agent to be able to accomplish the different tasks that you intend that AI agent to help you with, right? So the system prompt helps the AI agent understand which tool it should use under which circumstances. So an AI agent can leverage its multiple tools to solve problems that are more complicated than any single tool can address on its own. So I think about the tools I would use when like designing a data center, for example. I would use Visio to draw diagrams, and I would use Excel to track my hardware inventory and plan my IPv space, and I would use Word to communicate a design explanation, and I might use an IP calculator, right? So just like a real employee has tools, your AI agent needs tools also. Similarly, there's this concept, you may have heard of it already, called the Internet of Agents. If you haven't, Cisco's got a white paper on this. Just go to Google, search it up, and I'd recommend you give it a read. But the idea is that a group of AI agents where each agent has its own special capabilities and tools that you can now you can now bring multiple specialized AI agents into a group, and then that group of AI agents now can be used to solve problems which are more complicated than any single AI agent can address on its own with its tools. So in this case, I think of members of a team that put their brains together to solve a complex problem where you know, Bob on the team knows something specific, and Jan on the team knows other specific information different from Bob, but the two of them need to get together to cooperate and solve this complex problem. Okay, so this is the basic fundamentals behind AI agents and how they work. And just to quickly recap, AI agents need five things, right? Some of them are optional, but most of them are required. So they need a brain, they need memory, they need a set of instructions, they need knowledge, typically optional if you're doing RAG, and they need tools. Okay. So I already mentioned some of the tools that I'm learning, but we're focusing this demo on N8N. So I'm going to click on this workflow here called Google Calendar Management and sort of introduce this to you. Now, one of the key concepts of N8N is that any workflow requires a trigger. Okay, and that can just be a manual trigger, like you literally click a button and it kicks off the workflow. In this case, my trigger is using a chat message. Okay, and so down here, N8N, as part of the UI for that workflow automation tool, provides this nice default chat interface where you can actually communicate with your workflow. And then here you can see that I've added what's called an AI agent. So if I come over here into the menu and type AI agent, then this is what I clicked on. Okay, and that gave me this icon or this box that you see here. Now you're going to see a number of things on this box. On the left, this thing that I'm highlighting over here or putting my mouse around is the input to the AI agent, which is going to come from my chat interface here. Okay. There's also a connector for the chat model. So for example, you can come here and you can type in Olama chat model. Okay, so I could click this, and then here is where you are going to see the models that you've downloaded locally into your Olama container from the Olama library that I was showing you earlier. Okay, so as soon as you do that pull model name command and it finishes downloading, then that new model will show up here in the drop down list. So this is an example of how you would use a locally hosted chat model for your development and execution purposes. Okay, optionally, another option instead of Olama chat model, we can type in Open AI. Okay, and there's Open AI chat model. Okay, and you'll see right over here, I have the Open AI chat model. So if we double click on this, I've currently got it set to GPT-4o mini, which is what I talked about earlier. I'm pointing at my Open AI account using my API key. I'm not going to go into the details of how to set that up. It's not too difficult to figure out. I figured it out intuitively. I went to OpenAI, I created an account, I created an API key, I grabbed it, and then I came here and basically plugged it in. Okay, and then when you save it, it'll basically let you know whether the connection was successful. So this is tying me to my OpenAI account. I'm going to leverage the 4o mini model because it's smart. It's also cheap. And then you can add various configuration options for the model. In this case, I added sampling temperature of 0, which means I don't want you to be creative. I want you to be precise. Okay. The higher you go up towards 1.0, the more creative the responses will be. But again, I'm trying to achieve automation, uh, and I don't want a lot of creativity. This isn't, I'm not asking it to write a creative essay for me, right? Or help me research a topic, right? I'm using it for a very specific purpose. So I've set the sampling temperature to 0. Okay, so this is going to give the AI agent the brain, right? The model. That's what we talked about. The next connector here is for memory. And so if you type in memory over here on the right, there's an option here for simple memory, and that's what we've configured or attached to the memory connector. So same thing, if we double click on this, we can see that it's basically tracking the connected chat trigger node. Okay, so that's referring to this chat or this chat right here. It's basically going to monitor that chat using the session ID, and it's going to give us a context window length of 5. So I just put this in here, and that's where how many past interactions the model receives as context. So the last basically 5 messages. And you could probably bump this number up to 10 or 15 or whatever you want, but it is using memory on your local machine. And so, unless you're going to do some really complicated use case, you could probably get away with doing a small number, which is what I did here. Okay, so we've got a brain and we've got memory. And then the next thing I talked about was instructions, right? So if you double click on the AI agent, then in here you will see the system message. And this is essentially the instructions that you're giving the AI agent, okay? And you'll notice when you mouse over this field that it says fixed or expression. And so fixed would be, if you're going to give it a static prompt, it's unchanging, there's no dynamic points of input. Expression is going to allow you to involve input from, let's say, an input form, right? Grab fields from a form and include those in your prompt. If you click this little button down here on the lower right, it'll expand your system message, your system prompt. And so here I am saying, this is all different prompting techniques. I'm not going to get into this. There's plenty of videos on YouTube that talk about proper prompt engineering. So here you can see I'm assigning it a role. You're a highly skilled and creative executive assistant who's an expert at scheduling events using Google Calendar. I'm giving it a number of tasks with regards to scheduling. I'm giving it, specifics of what it is I expect and lots of examples. And this is where I was saying earlier that um, having a good prompt is really important, and having a good model is really important. So I started to get closer to the results I was seeking when I went to GPT 4.0, but I nailed it down when I provided, maybe I had 1 or 2 examples in my system prompt, but I provided a lot more examples. Okay, now I'm not going to go through all of the text and what I wrote in this system message because that's what the demo is all about. I just want to show you rather than read it all to you. Okay, so this AI agent is connected to the chat trigger node. It's going to take information that is provided within the chat and it's going to process it based on the instructions that I've given it in the system message. Okay, so we've got a brain, we've got a memory, we've got instructions. In this case, I'm not attaching any any external knowledge. Well, I kind of am. I'm doing that via this document retriever, which is sort of the uh, second part of my demo. So we'll get to that in a few minutes. Okay, so let's consider this tool here, our external knowledge. And then the fifth thing was tools, right? And this is one of them, but I have a tool here for checking calendar availability. This is Google Calendar, okay? Got another tool here for creating a new event on the calendar. Got another tool over here for generating an image. And so in the system prompt, I have given the AI agent instructions about when it is appropriate to use each of these tools. Okay. And so all I have to do is chat with the AI agent. And then based on the input that I give the AI agent, it is going to dynamically select the appropriate tool for what it is that I'm asking to do. Okay. So the first part of this demo, okay, is going to be trying to schedule an appointment on Google Calendar. So we need to be able to check calendar availability. We need to be able to create a new event. So here you can see I'm using this account. I'm going to come down here for tomorrow, which is May 20th, and I'm going to intentionally create an event called conflicting event. In other words, I'm going to chat with my AI agent and tell it that I want to schedule an appointment on May 20th between 1 and 2 p.m. Mountain Time, which is my time zone. And it's going to check calendar availability and say, hey, there's conflict, right? That's not going to work. And part of my system prompt is then to say, okay, great, there's a conflict. Can you help me resolve that conflict? Can you tell me over the next couple of days what time slots are available? Okay, so we're going to show that now. And then once we select an available time slot, we're going to go ahead and book that time slot here on the calendar. Okay, I'd like to book an appointment on May 20th, 2025 from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Mountain Time. Okay, and I'm just going to double check my calendar. 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. That's the range that I'm in here. That's where we have this conflicting event. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and send that off, and it's going to go here to the AI agent. It's going to talk to the model, and the model is going to work with the system prompt to provide a response based on my input. Okay, it's still working. And it says the requested appointment on May 20th from 1 to 2 p.m. Mountain Time conflicts with an existing event. Here are some alternative time slots available on that day. Okay, great. That's perfect. Okay, I'd like to book the appointment on May 20th, 2025 from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Mountain Time. Okay, so it's going to go back to the AI agent, back to the model, and it's going to try and book that appointment. But it says, hey, you haven't provided me all the information that I need, right? When you create a new event in Google Calendar, you've got to give it a subject and a description. You want to invite some people. So it's now coming back to me and saying, hey, I'm missing this information from you. So could you provide it? So I'm going to say, sure. Subject, AI agent demo, description, uh, uh, show people how AI agents work. That's what we're doing here. And then uh, invitees, uh, I'll just put in, I'll just put in rightflow511 at gmail.com, which is basically the calendar, the Google account that I'm using for the calendar and for Google Drive as part of this demo. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and send that off to the chat, and then you're going to watch down here. Okay, it's going to create a new event. So I probably should have pointed out earlier that when we were, saying we wanted to create it from 1 to 2 p.m. and it came here to check the calendar availability, and then we said, okay, let's go from 3 to 4. It checked calendar availability again. It said, okay, it's available, but I need the subject, the description, the invitees, etc. Okay, so at this point, we've given it all the information it needs, and it says the appointment's been successfully scheduled. Here's all the details. Here's the subject, the description, the invitees, the date, the time, etc. Okay, so one thing that I'll do here real quick is I'll just open up Mail and stick that here, and we should be seeing. hmm, did I type in rightflow511? Rightflow511. So I should be getting an invitation in the email. Maybe it just hasn't come in yet. I'm not sure. Um, I've done that many times and it's worked. Not sure why that's not happening here. In any case, if we go back to the calendar, we can see that it booked AI agent demo from 3 to 4 p.m., right? Underneath our conflicting events. So it recognized the conflicting event. It gave me the options of several different hours based on the rules that I provided in the system prompt, which incidentally eliminated the last hour of the day was not to be presented as an option. So I booked from 3 to 4, and here's our appointment. If I open this up, I can see, oh, that's probably why I didn't get any emails, because I'm the organizer. Why would I email myself? So if I had put in my personal email address, which I didn't want to do because I'm recording this and posting it on YouTube, um, that's what I've done in the past. Then you would that person or that email address would then receive an invitation, automated, completely automated. Okay, trust me, it works. I've done it several times. Okay, so that is the sort of Google Calendar check availability, create new event part of the demonstration of this AI agent, right? I didn't have to tell it to check calendar availability. I just said, I want to book an appointment. It knew to do that because in my system prompt, I basically said, hey, use this tool when you need to check calendar availability, right? Use this tool when you need to create a new event. Okay, so we can also, it's kind of nice. It says you can view the event here. I already had the calendar open, but if you click here, it should open right to that date. This actually opened to my personal email address. But if I click on the right email address, then there it is. Okay, so it's basically going to take you right there. Okay, cool. So next part of the demo is going to be RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. So if we go and look at Google Drive, what I've done is I've created this folder here called Monitor Folder. So if I double click on that, I've uploaded a couple of documents. I've got one here about AI pods. I've got one here about PPDIOO, which is a methodology that network engineers have followed for many years, that Cisco was kind of behind. It stands for plan, prepare, design, implement, operate, optimize, right? So it's kind of like, how do you execute a project from start to finish? So I've uploaded a couple of documents, and so now I want to like talk you through the workflows that are associated to this. Okay, so I need to exit this workflow for a minute to first show you this rag with pinecone workflow. So what you'll see here is that there's this Google Drive trigger, and it's based on a file being created in Google Drive. So if I go back to Google Drive and I were to just take a document and upload it to this folder, it would detect that file upload, okay? And then it's going to download the file from the Google Drive folder here to N8N locally so that it can work with it within N8N. And then it's going to send it to this Pinecone vector store node, okay? And so what is a vector store? It's a type of database that allows you to take text-based files and chunk those files up into smaller bits, right? Because when you're looking for data in the file, you don't necessarily want to try and match data across the entire file. You want to try and match your query to a portion of the file and then go grab the relevant portions of the file instead of the entire file. So it's basically a mechanism that allows you to search large text files more quickly. And the way that that works, Pinecone requires you to use an embedding model. So here I'm using embeddings OpenAI connected to the embedding model connector. And so, GPT-4o is a generative AI model. This is a different type of AI model, an embedding model. So this is used for basically chunking your text files, okay? So I pointed at this specific model, text embedding 3 small, okay? And then we've got this data loader, which basically takes the chunks of the file that you uploaded to Google Drive and loads it into this vector store. Okay, so the type of data is a binary file. Load all the input data, automatically detect by MIME type what type of file it is, and then it's going to chunk that data using this recursive text splitter. Okay, and so chunk overlap is 200 and chunk size is 500. Maybe this means something like 500 words, and then overlap each chunk by 20 words, something like that. Okay, so it's going to stick it in Pinecone. So here I've got Pinecone open. I'm using an API call with an API key that I set up. My API keys are here. I don't want to show those, but here if we look, we can see that it recognizes this as being a PDF file, and if I open it, uh, it's actually talking about AI pods, right? The pre-designed bundles signify that they are pre-tested and validated. Okay, and if I mouse over, because we kind of get cut off at the end of the line over here, you can actually see Cisco AI pods showing in the mouse over text that I'm showing right there towards the end, second line from the bottom. Cisco AI pods offer flexibility and scalability. Okay, so you can tell that I'm showing 10 hits here. If I scroll down, you can see 10 chunks of this file, but I actually have 95 chunks total, right? I'm not sure why I can't see all 95 in this scrolling list here. Maybe that's because I'm using the free version, or I just haven't played around with Pinecone enough. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. Just understand that we've uploaded these files, right? These 2 files so far, AI pods and PPDIOO. They are now in the Pinecone vector store, and so that means I can now chat with them. Okay, so remember, this workflow actually got called by the other workflow. Okay, so this workflow is called RAG with Pinecone. So if we go back to Google Calendar Management and look at our tool, we have this, you know, okay, RAG with Pinecone handles the document upload to Google Drive and vectorizing the data in these files into the database. Okay. Separately, apart from that, I have a separate workflow or tool called a document retriever, which goes back to the Pinecone vector store, uses the embedding model along with the OpenAI chat model to do a search within the different chunks of data within the vector database, identify matches, answer questions, and provide a response back to me in my chat. So here I can ask questions like, let's see, can you tell me what the last O stands for in PPDIOO? And if I hit question mark, it comes back and it says the last O in PPDIOO stands for optimize. PPDIOO is a network lifecycle model that stands for prepare, plan, design, implement, operate, optimize, which is correct. That's what I said earlier. It is used in the context of network design and management to ensure that networks are effectively planned and maintained. So a network deployment project, as I was explaining. Okay, so here we can actually see that we're getting a response from information within the document. If we really want to, right, we can open up PPDIOO and we can come down here and we can look PPDIOO framework. What does it stand for? Prepare, plan, design, implement, operate, optimize. There's the last one. Okay, so what if we ask it another question? How about, can you provide some detail around what the design phase is for in PPDIOO? Okay, it's going to go over here to my document retriever. Then it's going to say the design phase is crucial for creating a detailed blueprint of the network infrastructure. Here are key aspects: requirements analysis, network architecture, detailed design, including things like IP addressing schemes, VLANs, routing protocols, et cetera, et cetera. You know, the design provides scalability and flexibility. It allows us to estimate our costs, validation review, documentation, etc. Okay, so again, if we go open this document and we go to design, gets into the details, subject to limitations identified in prior phases, such as budget, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so in this case, it's unclear whether it's getting the information directly from this document, or what it could be doing is um, it could be leveraging information from the LLM, this generalist large language model. So basically using data from the internet. And since it's providing these steps 1 through 7, we do not see those under design in the PPDIO document. So how about I say, can you please provide some detail around what the design phase is for in PPDIO, and be sure to use the document retrieval tool. Okay, so if I, when you noticed, I said it was going to go to this document retriever, and then we saw no motion on the icon here, right? So now I'm going to try this again. It should come over here to this document retriever. There we go, right? And now let's see what it says. Okay, so create detailed network design meets identify business requirements and goals, detailed network design, documentation, prototyping, proofs of concept, process definition. So it may still be using some information uh, from the large language model. It could be using information from, you know, other areas of this document, since PPDIO is largely based around design. So anyway, part of the reason that it didn't automatically go to the document retriever tool is because of my system prompt. So if I come in here and I look at my list of tools, I've said use the document retriever when asked questions. Okay, but what if I was more specific, like about PPDIOO? Then I wouldn't have to say make sure to use the document retrieval tool, right? because I'm asking a question about PPDIOO. So based on the system prompt, it should automatically know when to use that tool, right? And another thing I want to do is upload a new document. So how about and training puppies, okay, which is going to be the next part of the demo. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then what I want to do is come back here to folder. And then on my other screen here, I've got a document called Puppy Training Guide, which I'm going to drag over here. We're going to upload it. And then what we're going to do is basically go back to this rag with pine cone, go to executions. And if we look, right, this should refresh. May 6th, that's not today. Today's May 19th down here, lower right corner. So let's see what happened. Okay, looks like it uploaded successfully. So why is this not getting triggered? Oh, because my data is pinned. Okay, you don't need to know what that means. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to delete this file real quick. I'm going to come here. Pinning is what you can do when you're testing a workflow, so that's my bad. Okay, now let's go back and let's drag that file here again, and let's see if we can't get that workflow to trigger. Okay, so if we go to executions, what the heck? Oh, it shows pinned in the May 6th execution. So okay, it does not seem to be triggering my workflow the way that I wanted. I saw here that this is my AI Pods PDF document, which is a prior execution. So okay, so let's try and troubleshoot this. Let's look at our Google Drive trigger. Oh, every minute, right? So maybe it hasn't been a minute. That's a possibility. Oh, I know why. It's because my workflow is not active. Okay. So basically, I have to like trigger this myself. Okay. So I'm going to say test workflow. It's going to go to Google Drive. It's going to download the file. It's going to vectorize that file. Okay. It's done. Okay. It executed the workflow. If I go to executions now, we should see one on May 19th. Okay, and we can see that all of the steps were basically successful, right? That's what the green check marks mean. So what that means is that now we should be able to ask some questions about training puppies. My family's about ready to get a new dog, so this is a topic that's of interest to me. So if I go back to Google Calendar Management, go back to my chat, then I should be able to say, remember, we updated the system prompt in the AI agent to basically tell it, hey, use the document retriever tool whenever you are asking questions about training puppies. So, so now what if I ask it a question like, can you tell me some of the steps for training a new puppy? Okay, it should go to the document retrieval tool, into the vector store, right? And it should provide a response based on information in that document. Start early, use positive reinforcement, be consistent, teach basic commands, potty training, consider puppy classes, be patient. So let's go have a look at our document. Okay, use positive reinforcement, keep training sessions short, use consistency, practice in different environments, be patient. Okay, so it looks like maybe it leveraged, I don't know, I haven't read this entire document yet, but basically you can tell that it's pulling information from this document, maybe not exclusively, or it may be pulling, teach basic commands from another part of the document. So it's not necessarily quoting things exactly from the document in the, I don't know, I guess what I'm trying to say is in the document, puppy training tips, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4 tips, 5 tips, right? But what we wound up with in our response was 7 items. So maybe 5 of them are coming from the tips. And then, maybe a couple of them are coming from these key takeaways. I'm not sure. right? But we do know, right, that the workflow, when asked a question, went to the document retriever and basically searched our vector store for these answers. And really, when you look at them, starting early, begin training your puppy as soon as you bring them home. Use positive reinforcement, right? It's all about repetition and reinforcement. Be consistent. Teach basic commands. All this stuff makes sense, right? And yeah, it could be if it wasn't using the document retrieval tool. So let's say, for example, if I went here and changed my system prompt and I didn't tell it to use the retrieval tool when asking questions about puppies, and I save this, let's try it again. Um, how do you train a puppy to use a leash? Okay, does it go to the document retrieval tool? No, it doesn't. It just goes to the LLM, right? So that generalist knowledge within the LLM, and then it provides a response, right? So choose the right equipment, introduce the leash, practice indoors, start with short sessions, use positive reinforcement, teach loose leash walking, practice turns and stops, gradually increase distractions, be patient, consistent, end on a positive note. So again, this is the generalist knowledge coming from the LLM and not from the document retrieval tool. Okay. The last bit that I want to show here, and I'm just going to kind of clear out my chat history and memory, kind of start over just to clean up my screen, is this image generator tool. Okay, and so if I exit this workflow, I've got an image generator here, and what you can see is that this workflow is executed by another workflow. And so this is what ties this workflow to the previous one, right? To the generate an image tool for my AI agent, right? So if my AI agent is asked to generate a tool, then generate an image, then it'll go to the image generator tool. That tool will execute this workflow here. So executed by another workflow. Okay, and I do have some pin data here, so I want to unpin this, save my workflow, but basically there's an image generator tool for OpenAI to use the DALL-E 3 model to generate an image. Okay, and then basically this will respond with a URL, and then I'm going to use an HTTP request node to query that URL and download the binary image, and then I'm going to save that binary image back to Google Drive. Okay, so if we go look at Google Drive, I'm going to get out of my monitor folder because I'm going to actually do this here in the root folder of my drive. Okay, so I wanted to show you that there's no image file here currently. So now if I let's go back to my main workflow here, Google Calendar Management, and just say, can you please create an image of a flamingo standing on the moon? Okay, and hit enter. We should see this image generator kick in. And if I double click this node, it's going to call the image generator workflow. Okay, and so if I go back to my workflow, I'm going to wait for it to finish executing here. But basically, this image generator tool calls the image generator workflow that I was showing you earlier. Okay, so we're waiting for our response. It says, here's an image of a flamingo standing on the moon. Now, for some reason, it's not properly embedding that image so that I can view it right here inside the chat. I need to spend maybe a few minutes trying to figure out why that's not happening, but it does provide a link, right, to my Google Drive. So if I go back to my Google Drive, we're going to see there's a new file here, right? If I mouse over it, we saw the thumbnail here. If I just double click it, here's an image of a flamingo standing on the moon, right? And if I click the link inside the chat, it should take me to the exact same file, right? Pretty slick. Okay, so just wanted to record this demo to try to convey the key concepts of an AI agent and to show you a tool where you can actually build an AI agent and do something useful with it or multiple useful things with it. Remember, an AI agent needs a brain, it needs memory, it needs instructions or a system prompt, it needs knowledge, i.e., an external data store, right, for your documents you may want to upload and basically chat with your documents or do RAG. And then Number five is these different tools, right? And in your system prompt, you tell the AI agent when it is appropriate to use each of the tools. So there's really no limitation here in terms of the number of tools that you can attach to an AI agent, as long as you can provide, clear, crisp instructions to your AI agent about when it should use one tool versus another tool. Okay, so hopefully that was useful. I know that I went pretty quickly. We're right about an hour. If you have any questions, any comments, feel free to leave them. Leave them on my YouTube channel in the comments. All right. Hope this helps. Take it easy.